I think a lot of developers are using AI in a way that makes it much less useful than it could be. And it's usually not because they are using the wrong model, it's because they are giving it the wrong information. For example, you can pass some broken code into ChatGPT and say, fix this, and you'll probably get an answer. But if you also give it the error, what you expected to happen, what actually happened, your environment, what you already tried, and exactly what you want back, the quality of the answer can be very different. So today I want to show you 15 prompts that I think are actually worth saving. Not 15 different versions of write me some code. These are prompts for debugging, code review, security, performance, testing, architecture, and even working with ugly legacy code. And I'll show you when I'd use each one. Let's start with something every developer eventually has to deal with. You open a file and think, what am I actually looking at? This happens a lot when you join an existing project or work with older code. Instead of just asking ChatGPT or other AI to explain the code, I prefer to tell it what kind of explanation I need. For example, explain this code as if I'm familiar with the language and framework, but I haven't seen this code base before. Then I ask it to explain 4 things: what the code does, what the parameters mean, what it returns, and what could go wrong. The last part is important. I'm not just asking for a translation of the code. I'm also asking AI to point out things that might deserve a closer look. Number 2 is one of my favorites. I wouldn't just ask, review my code. That's too broad. Instead, tell AI exactly what you are concerned about. For example, review this production code for correctness, security, reliability, and clarity. Then I like to make it classify the results as blocking, should fix, needs. And one rule I find especially useful is don't give me general advice. Every issue must reference a specific line. That helps remove a lot of the generic review commands you can otherwise get from AI. If there is a problem, I want to know where it is and why it matters. Now let's make AI a little more aggressive. Instead of asking it to improve the code, ask it to try to break it. The idea is simple. Try to break my code. Tell it to look for inputs that could make the function crash, return the wrong result, or behave in an unexpected way. And for every problem it finds, ask for an actual test case. I find this especially useful for edge cases. Sometimes I don't need AI to write another implementation. I need it to attack the implementation I already have and find cases I didn't think about. Number 4 is a dedicated security review. And again, I wouldn't just ask, is this code secure? Instead, give AI a checklist. Ask it to check for things like injection, authentication and authorization problems, sensitive data exposure, input validation issues, and insecure patterns. Then ask it to give each finding a severity level and point to exact line involved. That's much more actionable than getting a long paragraph telling you that security is important. Of course, I wouldn't treat an AI review as a replacement for a proper security review, but as a first pass, I think it can be useful. Here is another one I think developers could use more often. Don't just ask AI, make this code faster. Give it some actual numbers. For example, this processes 100,000 rows and currently takes 45 seconds. I need it under 10. Now AI has some context about the problem you are actually trying to solve. You can also ask it to rank the problems by expected impact and ignore tiny optimizations, because changing a variable name isn't going to solve n plus 1 database query. This one isn't really about whether the code works, it's about whether someone else can understand and change it later. I like asking ChatGPT to review the code as if a new developer is going to join the team and needs to modify this code next month. Tell it to focus on things like naming, complexity, commands, structure, and error handling. And if I would also tell it not to focus on subjective style preferences. I don't need AI starting a database about whether single quotes or double quotes are better. I wanted to find things that actually make the code harder to maintain. Number 7 is about generating tests, but I wouldn't just say generate unit tests for this code. Tell AI what kinds of situations you want it to consider. Happy passes, empty collections, null values, boundary values, invalid input, and ask it to explain why each edge case matters. I actually find that part useful because you are not only getting a set of tests, you are also getting a checklist of cases you might have forgotten. This is probably one of the most useful prompts in the whole list. When I am stuck on a bug, I don't just pass the error message into AI. I give it the code, what I expected to happen, what actually happened, the error message, my environment, and what I already tried. Then I ask it to rank the possible causes and give me debugging steps in order. That changes the conversation from guess what's wrong to let's investigate this systematically. And honestly, that's pretty close to how I would debug the problem myself. You collect the information, come up with possible causes, and then eliminate them one by one. There is a problem with asking AI to refactor your code without giving it any rules. You say, make this better, and you can end up with 3 new dependencies, a completely different architecture, and somehow your 20-line function has turned into a small framework. So give it constraints. Don't change external behavior, don't add dependencies, keep the code readable, and show me the before and after. The constraints are doing a lot of the work here. You are telling AI not only what you want changed, but also what you are not willing to change. If you work with databases, I'd definitely save this one. Don't just pass a SQL query and say, make this faster. Give AI the query, the table size, the schema, the existing indexes, and the current execution time. Then ask it to run the possible optimizations by impact. But there is an important part here. Don't blindly trust the result. Run explain or whatever the equivalent is for your database and benchmark the change. AI can suggest an index, but your database gets the final vote. Now we are moving from individual functions to bigger technical decisions. If you are planning a system, give AI the architecture you are considering, but also give it your constraints. Team size, expected traffic, budget, data volume, technology stack. Without that information, you can ask for an architecture for a small application and get something that looks like it was designed for Netflix. One question I particularly like asking is, what should I build now and what should I defer? That's useful because good architecture isn't about adding every technology you know. Sometimes the better decision is simply not to build something yet. Before you build an API, ask AI to attack the design. Give it your endpoints and requirements. Ask it to look for REST problems, security issues, and usability problems. And for every problem it finds, ask for a corrected version. That's much more useful than, is my API good? Now you have a specific checklist and you also get a concrete alternative when something needs to change. If you work with older code bases, you probably have at least one file that nobody really wants to touch. This prompt is for that situation. Tell AI which modern version you want to target. Tell it which modern features you want to use. But most importantly, tell it preserve identical behavior. Then ask it to explain every change it makes. That gives you a more controlled way to modernize old code without simply rewriting everything and hoping nothing changed. This one is pretty simple, but I use it because documentation is one of those things developers are very good at postponing. Give AI the function and tell it which documentation format your project uses. Then ask for the summary, parameters, return value, exceptions, and a usage example. But there is one thing to keep in mind. AI can describe what the code appears to do. It doesn't automatically know your business rules. So I would still review the documentation before committing it. And finally, one of my favorite habits. Don't always ask AI to start coding immediately. Ask it to plan first. Tell it what you want to build. Give it the relevant part of your current code base, the requirements, team constraints, and timeline. Then say, don't implement anything yet. Just give me the plan. I also like asking for a verification step after every phase. So instead of build this feature, you get something more like plan, implement, verify, next step. For larger tasks, I find this makes AI much easier to work with because you have smaller steps and a chance to check the result before moving on. I'm also working on a practical course about using AI for real software development. The idea is not just to show you a collection of prompts, but to go through a complete development workflow, from an idea and requirements to using Cursor for implementation. So if that's something you'd like to learn, follow the channel because I'll share more about the course here as I build it. I'll put all 15 prompts together so you can save them and adapt them to your own stack. Find the link in the description below. And I'm curious which one you'd actually use in your day-to-day development. And if you want more practical AI workflows for developers, subscribe to the channel.